Hey, yo, I want to talk about draft, what it is, how you do it, and why it's fun. After last week's video where I opened a box of Double Feature to review it and see if it was possible to build 2 standard legal decks out of only 12 packs, literally none of you in the comments asked what you could do with the box if you bought one like it yourselves. Well, the best answer to that is draft. Now, I know I'm a little bit behind on my upload schedule, but I thought what better time to talk about draft than now with the upcoming release of Ravnica Remastered. Okay, I'm more than a little bit behind. Whoops, I should probably get to why you're here. So you want to know how to draft. Maybe you're brand new to Magic and looking for a fun and easy entry point. Maybe you're sick of Commander and want to try something new. Maybe you've drafted before but want some pointers so you've clicked on this video. Maybe you're watching this in hopes of seeing Green. She's not in this one and she's shy, but if you leave her a comment below, I'll pass it on. Oh, and like and subscribe while you're down there. Maybe you got given a box of Ravnica Remastered as a gift and thought rather than just open it, you'd actually like to draft with it because you think the set looks fun, but none of your friends have done a draft before, so need to know how. And you could just tell them, but you run a YouTube channel where you talk about Magic the Gathering a lot and thought making a video on draft would be a much more interesting way to do it. And now you're thinking about how weird it is that they're watching this video while you're in another room setting up. You know, a relatable, universal experience. I'm sure we've all been there. But any which way, you're here. So let's go through everything that you need to know for draft. Draft is a deck construction format where you open a pack, take one card from the pack without showing it to the other players, place it face down in front of you, and then pass the remaining cards on to the next person. The person before you gives you the remaining cards from their pack, and you again choose a single card, add it to your face down pile, and then pass the rest on again. You keep doing this until there are no cards left to pass. Once that's done, you open a second pack and repeat the process, this time passing cards in the opposite direction, until again there are no cards left. Do it all over one last time with a third pack, changing direction once more till there are no cards left to choose. At the end, you'll have the pile of cards that you picked, which you can use, in addition to basic lands, to create a 40-card deck, and then you play that deck against everyone else in the draft. So to be clear, you'll open 3 packs, pass them round, take 1 card each time before you pass, and then use those cards, plus some basic lands you'll acquire elsewhere, to build a 40-card deck which you will use to play in games of, usually, 1v1 against other people from your draft. This can be played by about 10 players in total, 12 at a push, 8 players being the sweet spot, but it is possible with as few as even 2, as long as each person has 3 Magic the Gathering draft boosters, or, as they're currently named, play boosters. So that's 3 packs for each person, which typically come from a box as it's usually slightly cheaper for everyone to chip in, and instead of buying individual packs, buy and share the contents of a draft booster box or a play booster box. Can you mix and match these different booster types or boosters from different sets together and still play? Yes, the contents will vary, even down to the number and types of cards in them, and different sets are usually not designed with drafting them alongside other sets in mind, but it is still possible to do as long as each of you have 3 boosters, even from different sets. However, draft is normally done using 3 packs each from the same set using the same type of booster. This is what the designers had in mind when they put the packs together and typically leads to a more cohesive play experience. But now you will have 3 packs. What next? Well, that kind of depends on where you are. Before you begin, there are some logistical questions that if you choose, you may want to answer going in. Like, is there a judge here? Are we being timed? What's the rules around keeping any cards that we pull from a pack or draft? Are we removing the land and tokens from the packs ourselves? Has that been done already, or will it be done for us? Where will I get my basic lands from? Do I have everything that I need, or will things be provided? Do I pass the unpicked cards on once I've chosen one, or wait until a time where everyone passes them at once? Can I just leave if I have to? How does that work? Or maybe even something as simple as, I don't know how to play Magic the Gathering, this is my first time, is that cool? Can someone teach me? And probably more questions. First off, relax, it's okay, we've all been there. And the answers to those questions are really going to vary depending on where you are. But also, it is never a big deal to ask if you need help, so honestly, don't worry about it. If you're in an official setting, there may be an organizer or a judge who may be in charge, so listen to them and don't be afraid to ask questions. If they're running an event, they'll be used to it and probably hoping to ensure that you have the best time possible, so they'll be happy to help. Maybe you're at a local game store for an event, a Friday Night Magic, or have been invited to join a casual playgroup. They may have their own rules or certain ways of doing things. Don't be afraid to ask someone. In my experience, the Magic community are usually pretty nice and happy to explain how things work. Maybe this is just something that you and a friend are running at home. There's a lot of resources online to help you do just that. From websites that explain card rules and interactions to things like timers akin to the ones that judges use if that's an experience you want to emulate. But the nice thing about doing it yourself is that you're in charge of how things work, whether games are timed, who gets to keep what cards at the end, and anything else that you might want to decide as it comes up. Just remember to have everything that you need, like 3 packs per person and enough basic lands for everyone, and more importantly to be polite, patient and understanding with each other and you will be fine. This is ultimately a game and it's meant to be fun, so it's okay if things aren't perfect. With all of that out of the way, I think we're ready to actually begin drafting. And as mentioned earlier, that means every player will open their pack, look at the contents of the card before choosing one and then passing the rest on to the next player. A few tips and tricks to bear in mind when doing this. Try not to openly discuss the contents of any cards that you see during the draft. If players know what cards have and haven't been picked yet, it can affect their strategy or give them an unfair advantage. Secondly, if someone's currently choosing, a bit disorganised or is in some way distracted, wait before you pass your unchosen cards onto them. You don't want them to accidentally get mixed in with the ones that they've picked or another pack. If you're unsure of what cards to actually pick when it comes time to choose, there's a few bits of advice that you can follow. First and foremost, think about colour, especially if you're new. There is nothing wrong with picking a colour or two and then putting all of the cards of those colours into one deck. You may have people tell you that that's not great advice for a good deck, which is true. But honestly, don't worry about it. It's the easiest way to deck build and will result in a deck that at the very least will function somewhat, and a method that is rarely wrong if you have no clue what you're doing, or at least until you have a bit more experience under your belt and the confidence to be a bit more tactical. Sticking to one colour is a fine choice, but if someone else at the table is also playing that colour, they may snag all of the cards before you can get your hands on them. Choosing 2 colours helps minimise that risk a bit, because it gives less chance for all of those cards to be taken, so that's usually the way to go. You can pick 3 or more colours, nothing wrong with that, but bear in mind only a handful of sets are really designed with a 3 colour or more draft experience in mind, so you're probably better off sticking with 2. Also, you don't need to make that choice from the first pack. Your final 40 card deck isn't going to contain every card that you draw. Having to change your game plan mid-draft isn't the end of the world, you'll be okay. Now all of that advice is very beginner friendly. If you're a bit more confident or have a bit more experience, then bear in mind bread. No, it's an acronym. There we go. This also isn't perfect deck building advice, but it's good to cut your teeth on and helps build slightly more competitive decks. Bread is the order in which you want to pick cards when presented with them. Your first pick should be bombs. These are powerful cards that can win you the game or give you an idea what the overall game plan for your deck should be. It can be hard to tell what the bombs from a set actually are, especially if you're new or don't know all of the rules or mechanics. But for a very vague guide is if the set symbol on the card here is golden yellowy or orange in colour, then it is a rare or mythic card and probably more powerful because of it. Next is removal. This means picking cards that can deal with your opponent's threats. Cards that say destroy and exile are good picks. But in a pinch you can achieve similar results with cards that do things like tap your opponent's creatures, return them to their hand or counter them as they come into play. E stands for evasion. This is for cards that are hard for your opponent to deal with, usually in the form of creatures that can't be blocked or only blocked under certain conditions. Less frequently, it can also apply to spells that can't be countered or in some way inhibit your opponent's ability to deal with them. Aggression is next. These are cards that I like to think of as cheap and cheerful, usually in the form of creatures with haste, but also some cheap damage spells, basically cards that you can play early with unspent mana or in an emergency and that hurt your opponent before they're properly set up. Finally, D stands for Devon. Devon is always asking me to play Brawl with him, and I really don't want to play Brawl. Devon sucks, and so these Devon cards are the dregs of the pack, the dirt, the duds. If you see a card that's a bit useless or expensively costed or requires overly convoluted gameplay to achieve its results, then that card is a Devon. Pick that one last. And the last piece of deck building advice I can give is preparation. Before you sit down to draft, if you can find out what set the packs you'll be drafting with are from, you can have a Google and see what's included and any draft archetypes the designers had in mind when they made the set. According to this article, link in the description, That Ravnica Remastered set, for instance, includes 10 archetypes in it, one for each of the guilds. But looking them over, they're actually good examples of draft archetypes found in many sets. So real quick, I'm going to go through them and explain what they are and how they play in case you see the same archetypes in your draft experience. Oh, and also, these guild names are often used as a shorthand by experienced players to tell what colours they're running in a deck. So watching this will hopefully explain what it means when someone says they have a Rakdos deck, for instance. Here we go. The Azorius Senate in white and blue represents Ravnica's government and lawmakers, and in this set creates a tempo deck, which means it wants to play efficient creatures early and then use spells and effects in the right order to lock your opponent down and hold them back. House Demir in blue-black is the secretive rumoured 10th guild wrapped in mystery, which makes a control deck. That means it wants to use removal, mill, or counterspell to prevent your opponent from playing cards whilst drawing cards yourself to out-resource your opponent. The Cult of Rakdos, founded by the demon Rakdos himself to perform criminal acts and entertain his chaotic desires. They form an aggro deck. Lots of small and fast creatures to kill your opponent before they have time to react. The Gruul clans in red and green represent, I guess, Ravnica's eco-terrorists, who once cared for the wilds but now seek vengeance on the seas. They make a big creature deck, or monster deck, or creatures matters deck, all the same thing really, that looks to play the biggest creatures and then swing into your opponent hard. The Selesnya Conclave in green and white are caretakers of Ravnica's nature, maintaining what they call peace and order through force and manipulation. They make a token deck, spitting out a lot of creatures, sometimes about overwhelming your opponent with sheer numbers, or sometimes using those token creatures as a resource to power up other effects. The Orzhov Syndicate in white and black, aka the Church of Deals, is the Guild of Capitalism and Control, where even the dead are contracted to serve. Orzhov is a life gain deck, and these can take many forms, but are always about gaining as much life as possible, sometimes triggering other effects when they do so, sometimes so they can spend that life as a resource, and sometimes just to have more life than their opponent so that they're really hard to kill. The Izzet League in red and blue, Ravnica's engineering inventor wizards who fix people's boilers and stuff. They have a spells matter theme, which means a lot of non-creature spells often comboing off of each other for exponentially greater results than casting the cards individually. The Golgari Swarm of black and green have a focus on Ravnica's dead, and also agriculture? The Ravnican guilds are wild. Anyway, they make a graveyard deck, meaning they play cards that either care about how many things have died this game, or use your graveyard as a resource to play other effects. The Boros Legion in red and white represent Ravnica's military might, and like Rakdos, also build an aggro deck. Well, like I said, there's not actually that many archetypes out there, so me telling you all this is actually a pretty good sample of what most sets are like. The Simic Combine in green and blue also care about Ravnica's nature and the wild, and also weird mutants, and they make a counters deck, starting out as small creatures but gradually gaining +1/+1 counters throughout a game until they are massive and a real threat. And finally, not really a real archetype, but there are plenty of colourless spells or cards that care about having lots of colours for players who don't want to stick to two. As I said, this is a good sample, and as you can see, some draft experiences have a lot going on. It is good to know what archetypes are in a set and what you think you're going to enjoy playing before you sit down to draft. Finally, you have to build your deck from your pile of chosen cards. Your deck needs to be 40 cards, and a general rule of thumb is you want 17 lands, 15 to 18 creatures, and 5 to 8 other spells. That's not exact, you can run more spells for instance, or more or less lands, but it's a good guide because you'll have enough spells to play, enough land that you won't have too many or not enough, and enough creatures that you'll have something to play that can stick around and hit your opponent each turn. As for your mana curve, it's okay to have 1 or 2 expensive spells in the deck, but you want about 6 to 8 cards that cost 2 mana, and 6 to 8 cards that cost 3 mana. That way, you're more likely to have cards in hand that you can actually play each turn. And that's it! Now it's time to actually sit down and play the game, just like any other game of Magic. Your life total will be 20, and your games will most likely be 1v1. It's as easy as that. I hope you have fun drafting, and don't forget, bread. If you have any questions, comments, or feel I left anything out, let me know in the comments below. Hey, and tell me, what's your favourite Ravnica guild? And be honest, which guild would you be a member of? I'm sure Brawl is a lot of fun, it's just becoming the principle of it now. Stop asking me, Devon, I don't want to play Brawl. God, you suck. Thank you very much for watching this video, and thank you to everyone that supports me, like James Diamond, and the rest of my patrons whose names are on screen now. I'd also like to thank the sponsor for this video, me and my Patreon page, where you can get your name credited on screen too. Check it out in the link in the description below. Hit the like button, leave a comment, install an ad block, most importantly subscribe and share this video with a friend. Hit the notification bell and do all those things the algorithm loves. Oh, and with that notification bell, make sure you have it set to all, because otherwise you might miss some uploads. If you agree or disagree with any of my points, or you want to see me do a video on another subject, let me know and I will see you next time. Now, if you've ever seen any of my videos, you know how much of an agent of chaos I am. You can have no idea how hard I had to fight the urge to intentionally mispronounce one or two of those Ravnican guilds. Azor Ius, Psymike, Daimir, Reikadus. Most people don't make it this far into the video. Reikadus? Imagine the comments. People would have lost their minds.